on there, YouTube? Back from being sick for a week. I try to keep my coughing down to a minimum. So last weekend I didn't make any videos. I was feeling pretty bad, but I got out here for a little bit and did some work on this new Ratrod frame. And then all week I was working and resting when I wasn't at work, so didn't get anything else done, but I thought I needed to do a video here to catch you up to speed. This body, this is one of the, this prototype from Nightcrawlers 3D. This was a resin casting of the two-door sedan, and it had some imperfections. I went ahead and cut, I think, about a ½ inch off the bottom of it. Some of the mold didn't hold very well, so he sent it to me just to mess with, and I've been sitting there looking at it for a while. Thought maybe I could make something out of it. But I went ahead and did the Metal Masters iron oxide paint, and ran out of activator squirting it. So it's got 2 coats of activator, but it was kind of windy outside, so it dried before it had a chance to fully rust over. But I think this build is going to be using the Strut Cab from Shapeways. This is just a Ratrod truck cab. There's a link in the video description box. And I did the same thing with that. I did a pretty heavy coat of the oxide paint and a lot of activator. And that's what we've got. It's been done now for a couple weeks, so it's about done rusting over. It's got a good look, lots of blemishes and things on it, so it's not too, it's not even. There's lots of different spots here and there, so I'm happy with how that looks, and I've kind of built this frame around it. I just thought I'd throw that other one on here to kind of do a mock-up. So let me show you what I've gotten so far. Alright, so I've got front suspension done already. I'll show you that better here in a minute. It's just a ladder style chassis, the step in the back, and it is all welded. It's I'm getting better with my techniques. It's really sturdy, and it's just about perfectly square. I still haven't come up with a way to make a jig to hold it square while I'm welding. Just because of the size of it, it's kind of awkward and tricky to deal with, but this one is my best one yet. And like I said, it's pretty square. The front suspension is just a radius arm, and I've got a tower in front of the grill with some RC 4-wheel drive, or no, those may be Tamiya King Hauler shocks. And I need to do a little work on the point where they bolt, because it's a little close together, so I may have to sand down the top of the shocks and widen out the holes a little bit to make it all fit and look more even. But the bottom of the shock is bolted into the radius arm at the axle, so it's just with the threaded rod from the rod end to the axle, and it just screwed the shock in the middle of it. On the bottom end of that, I screwed in a RC 4-wheel drive shock end from their standard ultimate scale shocks, because the Tamiya one just had a plastic end, and it was a larger diameter, and it wouldn't allow the movement that I needed. So I put the nice aluminum RC 4-wheel drive ball end on it, so it'll allow it to flex and move like it needs to. I haven't done the rear suspension yet. I mocked up with a 4-link, but I've only got the lower links on it. I haven't figured out yet how I'm going to triangulate it, because ride height's going to be about there, about ½ an inch off the ground, but it's still I need to lengthen my front rods, and I don't have the right rod ends and stuff to do that yet, so I haven't figured that part out. But yeah, that's where I'm at on that. So I'm hoping in this video to get the rear suspension on and shocks on, so it'll be a roller. And the next step after that will be body mounts. So I've got this grill mocked up in here. It's just held in with 1 bolt. It's kind of flimsy, as you can see. That is the Farmall tractor grill that I had Awesome Designs make for me. And you can get those on the Shapeways store as well. There's a link in the video description for those. I just used some more of my ½ inch square tubing, and I cut it out around the cross member in the front, welded it on, cut it down, and voila. It gave me a place to mount the shocks and a place to mount the grill. These headlights, I'm sure a lot of you are curious about these. These are not it tips air nozzles for an air gun to like blowing out from under or blowing out your workshop and stuff like that. I found those in my storage building when I moved into my house, and the tips of them they're worn down a little bit uneven, but they've got a real nice look to them, and I like the scratched up aluminum. And I drilled some holes in them. I only have one screw in them right now because my idea didn't work, so they're not completely tight, but I'm just trying to get it mocked up. I'm hoping I can find a lens that'll fit that or close to it, and just leave them like that because I like the added color. It looks like some really bad old chrome, but they're kind of cool. They look like little jet engines. They've got a gap around here with little louvers or little grooves notched in it. It's a pretty cool look. In the front you can see my shocks are off just a little bit. I've got to, like I said, probably going to have to file down the head of the shocks. There's just not quite enough room for both of them to meet right there in the center, but it's got the look that I was going after. And I love the way that grill looks. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Let me talk about the body. So this is just, it's kind of like a Ford truck cab, probably a 30-ish maybe. 29, 30, I don't know. But this one's different than most of my other ones because it has a firewall and it has not really a dash, but it has a post to mount a steering wheel. Excuse me. And it's got a couple pads here to mount the body up with. And it was notched perfectly for the width of this frame. I made this around it. It fit the SCX-10 frame really well. My original plan was to use this to make a rat crawler, but one thing led to another, and now I have a new Ratrod build. So, yeah, the body mounts won't be too hard. I will have to make some kind of provision off of the body that I can screw into those holes, and the same thing on the front, just oriented differently. So that's not a big deal. That'll be the most tedious part of that will be trying to attach it to the chassis. Either I try to drill it and bolt it, or I weld some brackets on and make an actual body mount like you would find on a real car. So, yeah. Like I said, the link for this body is in the video description box. It looks pretty good. It had some weird lines on the back from the printing, but now with the rust on it, you really can't tell. I'm not sure if they're even coming out in the video. You can kind of see them. I did a little bit of sanding on them, trying to knock it down. But, yeah. You're not going to see much of that because the way the rear suspension is going to be. I am going to have to notch the back for the drive shaft, but I haven't even decided or thought about drivetrain yet. So I don't know what that's going to be and how that's going to work. So we'll come back and do that later once we get the body mounted and we start looking at an engine. The only option I see for this for a drivetrain is going to be the RC 4-wheel drive V8. This is a smaller cab. This is smaller than a lot of the things. I'll show you. This is one from Nightcrawlers 3D, and as you can tell, it's a good bit bigger, and it's narrower in the front, so I've got less space to hide stuff. So I think and plus the way it fits on the chassis, I'll show you that. There's not a whole lot of room between the grill and the firewall, because it has a realistic looking firewall that protrudes out from the cab. So you can see it's very tight between the grill and the cab. So the RC 4-wheel drive V8 I think will fit pretty close to perfect. I'm not set on the height of the grill yet. That's all going to have to be determined later once we figure out where the servo is going and how the engine and everything sits. But I can't afford to buy the engine right now, so it's still a long-term build, but I just wanted to bring you up to speed since I've been doing all this stuff off camera. I was trying to film some of it last Sunday, but I just wasn't feeling good, and it was a hassle, so I decided to scrap the film and just do some building. It's fun just to not have to worry about all that and just build, just get in that creative state and go. But I want to share this part with you, so let's start looking at the rear suspension. Alright guys, so I got my upper links mounted. I went ahead and just used the angled rods that I'd made already. What I did to get the right pinion angle was bring them in a little bit. I played with some spacers and got the pinion angle set where I think it'll work. See, it stays pretty straight. That's probably all the motion that we're going to get out of this thing. So that's at the front all the way down. The chassis is pretty parallel. That's the front suspension up. Now if I do the scale V8, that's going to have a lot of weight on the nose, so I probably will have to stiffen up those shocks or even add a spring. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But now in the rear, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do for suspension. Now I've got another set of these Tamiya Grand Hauler, I think, shocks they came off of, and I've got RC 4-wheel drive ends on them, so they'll flex and bend. But I also still have a set of these Lesu semi-truck airbags like I had on the number 2 build. So thinking about that, let me show you the number 2 in case you don't remember. So that's what I did on the back of it. It has a big long 4-link, and then I made a bar across the rear and mounted them to the frame from there. So can't do that on this frame, being as it's bobbed off right there. So it's gonna be a challenge to engineer something cool for this. Like I said, I don't know if I'm gonna use the airbags or not, but right now I'm just gonna sit here and stare at this thing till something pops into my head. Alright guys, so first attempt failed, and the reason why was the threaded rod for the lower arms wasn't, the longest ones I had weren't long enough to do what I needed to do. I need to move the shock base back closer to the rod end on the axle, and I had the shorter rod ends that would work, but I didn't have a long enough rod. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut the heads off of these RC 4-wheel drive titanium bolts, and that should give me another 1/4 inch to be able to do what I need to do, I hope. It's going to be a challenge to thread them because it doesn't have the end in it like it's like a rod. The rod ends have the I have one laying here, I thought. They have the 1.5 end, so you can screw it in. So yeah, we have to make my own so I can use the larger spacer on the front, move the shock back, and hopefully get this stuff working. Again, I'm going to have the same problem I did on the front with the upper mounts not having enough room. So I think I'm going to have to open the holes up on them a little bit and do some fancy spacer work to make it actually hold. So I need to cut a little piece of steel and drill some holes in it the right distance, and I'll make it work. So I'm going to get back to it. I got to take the rods apart again. Alright guys, been out here for a long time. Taking that rear end apart, those lower links and stuff, probably 7 or 8 times. Finally got everything to jive right. Got it rolling. Got the grill and everything back on now after we welded. It not quite as fancy as I was hoping, but it's definitely different. Let me spin it around so you can see a better look at it. I wanted to use the bags, but there wasn't anywhere. The way I designed this frame, with it bobbed off like that, there just wasn't anywhere to attach it. I looked at putting them on top of the axle, but then I would have had to weld the frame rails back out, and this matches the front with the triangulated shocks like that. So I went ahead and did this. I just took another piece of square tubing, notched it for that rear cross member, welded it on, and it was a little bit too narrow for the shocks, so I used an RC 4-wheel drive Trail Finder 2 shackle, just half of it, and I drilled out the center holes, which happened to fit the holes I had on my tubing there, and bolted it to that, and then I bolted the shocks to the shackle, so I got them further apart. We've got a fair amount of flex. I mean, it's pretty wild. But not a whole lot of travel. Once we get everything in it, get a motor in it, and figure out where batteries and stuff like that, definitely going to have to beef up the springs inside the shocks, probably front and rear. But we can cross that bridge later. And right now, got a good roller. I don't know what's next for this thing. I just started doing this on a whim. That's why I don't have any videos of the rest of the build. Just something I was tinkering around with. I like having lots of hot rods in the shop here, so I'm not, in any rush to get it running, because like my number 1 and my number 2, they've only been driven the one time for the videos. So it's all about the building for me. So I'm gonna mess around out here in the shop a little bit more, see what else we can come up with. I did want to show you these. These are not the Traxxas tires. These are they're 1.9. I get them on eBay. They apparently somebody overproduced a bunch of those for a model, a dragster model, and I bought I think 12 of them for like $30 shipped. So they're pretty inexpensive. I have some on the number 3 build back there in the background on the rear axle. But I got these to see. I didn't want to take those apart, but these RC 4-wheel drive steel wheels, new factory steel wheels, they're so wide that I don't have any tires that'll fit it. So these are pretty massive, and they got plenty of space in there to make the beadlock actually work. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but I've got those wheels, and they're, could be made to work on something retro, Ratrod or something. But yeah, it's always the problem with those is what do you put on the front? There's only so many skinny tires and wheel setups that would look right with a slick. So I don't know about that, but I thought I'd share that with you. They look pretty good in there. So I'm thinking, I've been kind of thinking about the number 3 build again lately. Thinking about doing some work on that. I keep getting distracted. I've got this body still. It's painted and ready. I don't have anything to put it on. I keep toying with the idea of using this frame for it. And obviously it needs a little work here, but it I don't know about how the stretch looks with that. It'd be a little bit too long for that body. But I do want this. I want that body chopped more, and I can't bring myself to cut this one up. I had a friend edit the file, the 3D file, to chop the top another 3 inches or so, and it looks good. But I uploaded it to Shapeways, and it's almost $200 to print. And it's got some imperfections on it, and I don't know enough about it to take the risk. So I haven't done anything with that yet, but I still got this body just kind of hanging out. I may go ahead, next time I get in the mood to do some welding, and I may go ahead and make another frame and just try to get together another roller and see if we can't put something together out of this. But I'm not in any hurry on it. It looks good hanging out in the shop, sitting on the lift over here. but it would look good on something too. But I think this chassis wheelbase is a little too much for it. Now this body would look good with that kind of stretch, but the problem with it is it's so wide that it won't fit over the, I can't fit it between the tires, so I'd have to run a wheel widener. This is, I think, 6.5 wide. It's pretty massive. That's what I had to do on the number 3 to make it fit. I had to, let me go ahead and pull that one up here. I had to use some, I think, 17 millimeter Wideners to get that to fit. Yeah, it's pretty massive. This body is set even lower. I don't know, that's not bad, but the only problem with this one is I don't have the front. I designed this chassis to have the full hood and fenders and everything to hide everything, and since I have chopped more off of this one, it will not look right, I'm afraid. I do have more 3D printed hoods and things from Nightcrawler's 3D, but it's not trimmed at all, and it's gonna be still too tall. Won't be able to hide my shock tower. I had a lot of issues with that chassis. It just was not working out. I've redone it a handful of times. Still trying to get it right. That was the last time I tried to bolt cross members together. When I built the number 1, I used a Bruiser chassis, and I just used RC 4-wheel drive links and things to make cross members. And it worked out well because the chassis was pretty solid. And when I did the number 2 build, I did that, some of it, but I welded cross members. So when I went to this one, the way it was designed, I went ahead and tried to bolt in cross members, and it was all wonky and it just wasn't sturdy enough. So I've gone back, I've welded a couple. I think I've got that's bolt, welded, bolt, welded. So I've got one in the middle and one on the front, and a bunch of bolted ones, trying to get everything to stay square. And it was just a good practice because I learned about drilling the holes and stuff in the right spots. I was having hell with that, and a lot of it was just because I cut the frame rail in half to make my 2 halves, and then I decided to drill the holes. So now what I do is I'll weld the frame, the shape of the frame that I want, and then I'll drill all the holes with a drill press, and then I'll come through and cut the body in half, which I'm still trying to find a better and more efficient way to do that. I know the Dremel is, A, it's just messy, and B, it's time consuming, and I'm burning up tons of cut-off wheels. I know they've got a thin cut-off wheel that I could use on my grinder, but I don't know how I'm going to be steady enough with that because that thing's big and heavy, and it's got a lot of torque, and it kind of pulls me around while I'm using it. So I'm worried that I won't be able to get a good clean edge with that. And I bought a bandsaw, but it does not have, I don't know. I can start cutting through and it'll start walking one side or the other. The belt's just not tight enough, I guess, and it's not powerful enough to really do it. And it's just a little Ryobi one, so there's not a whole lot of options for blades. I've got a metal blade on it, but it's not, I guess it's just not strong enough. So yeah, I don't know. I got lots of ideas still. This one, I'm not a huge fan of my suspension. It feels great. It's got a 3-link with a panhard in the back, and just a 2-link up front with the shocks triangulated. But I don't know. That one needs to be redone. But for now, it looks good sitting around the shop with the body on it. I do have that R4 in there, and I might steal that for another build if I need to. I might put that in the new one if I can get a RC 4-wheel drive V8. And I don't know, we'll just have that one around for looks for now. Now if you hadn't seen in the videos, these are the model car tires that came with the Model A Roadster 1/8 scale model kit. And that's the one that I built the number 1 up there with. And those are the rear tires. They're pretty hard. They had a good white wall. There's no real RC white walls, so did some tricks to get the wheel to stay in it, and it's kind of bead locked in, so it works. I don't know how well it'd hold up driving it. It'll probably wear quicker because it's not the right kind of rubber. But I'm not sure how these are going to do either, those, because they're from a model as well. So that's where I'm at on the number 3. It's fun to play with. I'm just having around the shop for looks, but I don't know. Number 2 is done. It's been in the magazine and a couple websites, and I could always go back and do more to it, but that one is so complete I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to change anything, so number 2 is going to stay the way it is. The number 1 build, the 32 Roadster, is pretty much done. There's a lot of things I would have done different with it. That was my first one. I was really trying to not hide the RC components, and I did. That cantilever suspension setup is just wild. Now I'm kind of number 2. I geared more towards the scale. The number 1 build has that interior though. Let me show you that. I did good on the interior on it, but I left the engine and RC components exposed. So, but yeah, it's got the most complete interior of all of them. It's got rusty floorboards, shifter, gauges, steering wheel, even a helmet for when you're racing. Thing's dusty. But yeah, I've stolen the ESC out of this. I used that one in the Banggood Bronco. So it's drivable. I just need some electronics. I've got an old Tamiya ESC I'll probably throw in it. But like I said, I'm not going to drive it. It's not super fast. I was worried about damaging it because it's kind of fragile. This is a cast aluminum windshield frame, so if it got rolled over, it's going to be bad. But yeah, it's a little bit sluggish, but it'll still do donuts in the dirt. Alright guys, I'm going to wrap this one up here. I'm just out here rambling around now. Stay tuned. I got lots and lots of stuff to come. Just getting back in the swing of things now. I'm feeling a little better. So be sure and check out my build series on the other Ratrods, and check the links below. You can find these bodies and parts that are available on Shapeways and from lots of places. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.